I first met David Emmerichs with Chris Haroff at a workshop in Malibu in 1990. And Chris had taken me under his wing at that workshop to teach me to operate, to teach me dynamic balance, because at the time I was still struggling to be a Steadicam operator.
I had a house up in the Hollywood Hills, which was kind of an Ellis Island for Steadicam operators moving out west. And that's where we would start tinkering and drawing stuff and carving the early drawings of the pro system.
George was sort of the driving force behind it, and then Chris was sort of the mad scientist genius behind it as well.
David Emmerichs introduced me to Mark O'Kane. And of course, Mark brought his particular genius to the table.
It was a good team, good group, because basically between us, if everybody agreed on something, you probably were on the right path. And plus, it's easy to get in your own little world where you think you're doing the right thing. It's good to have other people just to tell you that maybe you're not, or there's better ways to do it, or validate where you're going.
We were all kind of uniquely qualified to be able to do something like that. All four of us were operators.
And that's the heart of the Pro, was that it drew from operator desires rather than some bigger commercial priority.
The very first design projects that Chris and I worked on was actually a piece of equipment that ended up being called the donkey box. And it was basically an XY plate that allowed one to move the camera fore and aft and side to side on top of the center post. Up until that point, it was not possible.
It was the first time we were able to really finesse the position of the camera on top of the Steadicam.
The biggest problem in the arm that Chris and I had to overcome, or the biggest challenge, was how to make it carry a greater load range and still be operator friendly, which meant it didn't want to transmit the operator's footsteps to the camera. Mark O'Kane had probably the greatest influence in the vest out of any of the operators, because he'd been working on it for years for himself.
The monitor was the problem. It was part of some 1950s technology that required that the power supply, the tripler and everything, and the monitor remain connected. And they had to exist as separate parts. Getting all that together and putting it into one place was the first achievement that George managed.
Monitor by itself without having a whole slew of electronics to deal with, right? Standalone monitor type setup.
Now you can dictate what gets put on the bottom of the Steadicam and where the monitor goes and how detachable it becomes, and everything becomes more modular after that once you don't have that umbilical connection between the two.
Each thing they came up with, once you used it, you knew it was good because it was one of those eureka things where you go, I can't believe I never had this, I couldn't go back to the way it was before.
It's how you put the pieces together to solve the problems. That's what the Pro is really about.
Our design goals, which were reliability, ruggedness, simplicity, modularity, I think we've all met those.